Tomb of Sand by Geetanjali Shree. Translated by Daisy Rockwell.
11. What can be said about life? It knows how to spin a narrow orbit, a path so short it's finished the moment it starts. But it also knows the vast expanse of time, as when we step from a small lane out into an open street, which in turn joins a historic highway like the Grand Trunk Road. It brings new twists to the story by merging with the path after a long distance. The path trembles with the growling of trucks and tractors. It's wrapped in the softness of silk root. It is amazed, wondering where these streets have come from what eras, via caravans, via frontiers, and where have I come from, and where am I now, after traversing so many lifetimes? Am I still the same path, or an even smaller one from long before? But who will ask these questions, and when and who has come up with the answers? For now, there is a room, there is silence, and Betty is coming to Ma. She is the younger sister of Bade, and he shouts out loud when he sees her. Shouting is a tradition, an ancient custom upheld by eldest sons, in a masterful style, the practice only superficial. It doesn't matter if eldest sons truly feel such ferocity in their hearts, but whatever their feelings, they must be cloaked in this guise. It is said that Bade's father shouted from the heart, whereas Bade's real mood never reached boiling point. The father had shouted until his retirement, then he had handed the yelling over to his son and grown relatively peaceful himself. Bade had wrapped himself in the majesty of even louder yelling, and he had begun to glitter and glow. Now, in just a few months, he too would retire to ample leisure, and the yelling would fall to Sid. But for now, he still raged. Yet Bade was not shouting at his sister. He wasn't even speaking to her. He shouted because his pajama had got wet. He hadn't wet them himself. It was the chrysanthemums. They had jumped out at him on seeing a bowl of matar paneer in the hands of the maid. Bade saw it. That is not the chrysanthemums. No, no, not that. What happened was, he jerked his head so the hose he was using to water the chrysanthemums wiggled. Then the chrysanthemums jumped, and the stream of water hit his pajama. At this he jumped and yelled at top volume, "Not that!" And he went inside shouting, leaving the hose still flowing. "Must she kill us by feeding us leftover vegetable dishes?" "Mem Sahib said to serve it," replied the maid absently, bored of these real or feigned settos between husband and wife. Also, his sister had arrived. "Make something fresh. You can't serve them rotten food. Don't even give it to a beggar. He would die and you would get sued." "Well, you are the limit. Mem Sahib, Akka his wife, Akka the sister-in-law, Akka the daughter-in-law, so we will call her Bahu," confronted him angrily. "Bhaiya is coming this evening. You were saying last night there is just a little left. Serve it to him for dinner. Now it's turned to poison." And she flared up in English. "Stop undermining me in front of the servants." That's why they don't listen to me. And it does you no credit either. "Throw it away." Bade glared at the maid, who stood with the bowl by the fridge, still as a statue. "I have tasted it. It's first class. She's also brought friends. There are 2 of them. I'm putting it with the rest of the food, so we don't fall short." The wife glowered at the husband, either to make peace in front of everyone, or to indirectly inform her sister-in-law. "Sure, whatever's fresh, whether it's too little or too much. If you can't make anything else," Buddy snapped at the maid, "get rid of this." "Put it back," spluttered his wife. "I'll eat it." "Put it back for her. No one else is going to eat it." If I die, you can say he killed me. When was this shouting and glowering mere banter? When childish wrangling? When joking? When irritation? And when was it simply something to do? The maid was never sure. Of course, Betty had heard. The ears on one's back are rarely blocked. And indeed, her friend may or may not have been aware of the household's quirks. Whether or not the chrysanthemums heard, it made no difference to them. It was their season. They were enjoying leaping at the slightest thing, and so continued on with the pastime. They weren't even worried that Bury would soon retire, that he would leave the garden, and that there was no knowing what the next tenant's proclivities might be. What if they paved over the lawn and flower beds like people do nowadays to avoid dust and mites? Or planted wheat or corn or some such, instead of flowers, to save a bit of money? But the chrysanthemums weren't thinking ahead. They weren't about to stop leaping, and they bounced about as though they had springs coiled inside them. Several times larger than the enormous mansions of civil servants in small cities are their enormous lawns, flower gardens, orchards, and fields. Sometimes they even have pools, ponds, fountains, and follies. At one point during the reign of Victoria, large marble, they absolutely could not be fakes, statues of the Queen welcomed visitors to the gardens. Now that there was no longer any fear of being called a traitor for every little thing, they stood forgotten but not disrespected. In large cities, the houses began to grow smaller, but there too, where the buildings were now the trees, and dry mounds of earth were flowers, the homes of officers were oases in the desert, heaps and heaps of chrysanthemums. As soon as you entered Bury's home, you saw them through the sliding glass door at the end of the long hallway, bordering the lawn, chrysanthemums of every color and size. Betty saw Bury watering the flowers. The sun shone and a golden stream glistened beyond the tree in back, as though the Almighty had rubbed his hands with sunshine, scattering the glistening droplets. Betty's back had heard the entire paneer conflagration. Only Ma knew what her own back had heard. When Betty went off to Ma's room to gaze at the back, Bury said to the maid, "Tell Amma that the sun is shining and the chrysanthemums are in bloom. Set chairs out on the lawn. Why doesn't everyone come and sit outside?" He then turned his attention to the future of the chrysanthemums. That is, what would happen when he retired and moved into a flat like everyone else in the city? How many could he pot and take with him? If you fill those tiny balconies with pots, there's no room for your clothing, yourself, or anything else. The chairs were set out on the lawn, but Bury sat alone, just like his late father, who used to sit out there in the winter sun, half turned toward the chrysanthemums, and half toward the section of the house that could be seen through the glass door and the large door opening into the hallway. Father and son both had the ability to roll the pupil of the left eye into the left corner and the right into the right, so that both halves of the world might come into view at once, thus ensuring they knew everything that went on. They must be made of different stuff, eyes like that can observe the sights in both directions. Or maybe they weren't actually observing at all, and their eyes just rolled about. He could hear his sister speaking. Chrysanthemums everywhere. A no from Ma, but Ma all colors and sizes. Football, spider, flat, clustered, all bouncing. But why would she agree? Purple, white, yellow, pink, even green, waving towards the sky above the lawn. "I'll take you, okay? Why don't you bring your cane?" "No, please. Dizzy. Cane. No. Sunshine. No. Flowers. No, 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 no." Buddy got up, went into Ma's room, stood next to Betty. The two met without making eye contact, smiled unsmilingly. They hadn't spoken in years. The bitterness was gone, but the habit remained. They couldn't even remember their old sibling banter. "Are you getting up?" he challenged Ma's back. "How long has she been here? Do feed her. Have something fresh prepared. Otherwise, they'll just feed her rotten leftovers from the kitchen." 12. Step inside, and darkness shadows the room for a moment. The sunlight you have left behind turns to memory and disappears. Then a faint shade of warmth ripples across the closed eyelids. Then slowly the eyes grow accustomed to the darkness. The eyes which have also grown on the unwilling back, which see the fingers of Beti reaching towards it, which insist, "We will lift you up," which smugly declare, "We know how," which touch the back, rub it, caress it, as though their insistence will descend into the veins of the back, and finally the back will have to acquiesce. How could it not? The daughter trusts the dexterity of her hands, that when they touch all oppositions will dissolve. But the back makes a ripping sound and contracts. No, no, it mews. But this is Beti's word, her birthright, saying no to absolutely everything and everyone, chirping at her and trying to calm her down. Say yes, sweetie, take this, darling. Bitya Rani badi siani. Chanda Mama has brought lovely snacks from far away. Delicious. Come on and try them on your plate. No, give it to her in a small cup. Here you go, my little dolly Wally. Bade, who was 10 years older than she, sometimes egged her on. No, say no, shake your head, and say no. Enough. She's saying no, isn't she? Everyone adored the little girl's no. As a child, she was made of no, to the point that anyone trying to get her to do anything would tell her to do the opposite, and she would immediately cry, "No!" and do exactly what they wanted. Eat the rice, not the paratha. No, I'll eat the paratha. Take tea, not milk. No, milk, milk. Throw out the blue, not the red. Red, red, not the blue. No, no. You're awake, right? Don't go to sleep. Keep your eyes open. No, I'm closing my eyes. No, no, get it out of here. Sometimes Ma would say, when the cook would come in with the green chili coriander mint chutney, "It will sting her mouth." But Beti heard her beloved word no, and she would scream and growl and kick up a fuss. No, give! No, want! Everyone laughing happily with her no somehow disappeared with childhood. But her no grew up with her. No, I won't sue. No, I won't wear the dupatta. No, I won't be locked up. No, I'm not you. There was so much no, no, that even when she was going to say yes, her lips would first say no. Drink tea? No. I'll drink tea. It's very cold. No, it's very cold. A path opens up with no. Freedom is made of no. No is fun. No is nonsensical. Nonsensical, but also mystical. But Bade had to change tactics as she grew up. It was fine when she was younger. Go ahead and don't listen to anyone then. But as she got older, she had to be told what to do and what not to do. There's no question that an elder brother must signal his disapproval to his sister, joining forces with the parental tone. When his sister's lovers entered the fray, objections piled up, and Bade despaired. Today Baldi Patel, tomorrow glasses guy, the next day bearded dude. And when all three qualities were rolled into one, and the daughter of the household, that is, Bade's sister, became the subject of the town's gossip, the full gravitas of Bade's ancestor came to rest upon his shoulders, and the time came for more severe measures. Forbid the whole household from communicating with her. Do not prepare her special coconut burfi. No watching TV with her. No making eye contact. No smiling at her even by mistake. Then she will rue the error of her ways, and the era of misery will be over. But it wouldn't do to throw her out of for misbehaving, to bar the door of the home to her. And so he hadn't liked it one bit when his sister had moved out herself and set up homes elsewhere. When you lived there, he thundered to Ma, why would she run off elsewhere? But the feet of girls who say no are made of some other stuff. And while later they will hesitate at the door, they take off boldly in their early years. That he, Bade, had to have the door and hallway scrubbed with phenol was another matter. The bald beard glasses guy, Beatty's God knows what, who would come in on the pretext of carrying in or out some heavy baggage, had polluted the premises. One had to scrub thoroughly after that, driving the ghosts and ghouls out with a broom. And so what if you swept them out with a broom? Thereby hangs another tale. But for now, consider a matter lost in the mist of time. Right now, Bade is standing in his mother's room, a little behind his sister, a little beside her. The two are separate, but staring at the back together. Baldy, aka Beardo, aka Four Eyes, is beyond the scope of this story, and the brother pities his sister's lonely life. She might be all set in terms of home, money, work, but when all said and done, she is still alone. How had the no stopped coming from this side and started coming from that? There must have been some confusion, not for Bade, but for his sister, from Ma, not from me. The word, once so useful in my life, must have been dislodged from the dust where it lay. But it's not that special anymore, because one must have someone to say it to, and I am my own master now. But it belonged to me and only me, so how did Ma get her hands on it? What need was there for Beatty to ponder all this? All that happened was that no continued to emanate from Ma's back. 13. Twitching and snapping. The back becomes flat like a wall. But a living back can't become a wall, can it? It can if it wants to. What it wants to say is, I won't hear, won't see those voices trying to make this dying old woman live. Old habits are addictive, like booze and beedies. The back has already become a sieve. Everyone's dishonor rage, comprehension have already poked it full of holes. Where to stick the stopper? Now she sniffs things out before hearing, seeing. The familiar knock knock, clap clap. Betty is busy trying to stir up her enthusiasm for chrysanthemums. Their size, football, their color, purple. She prides herself on being able to forge trails through difficult terrains. That's how she managed to create her own home outside the family home. Gardener, ask Ma where to put the bouquets, says Bahu, wanting to play a role as well. Don't make them with besan, it sticks in the belly. With moong dal, ask Ma how we should make them. Bade pipes in, all plotting to look the most sympathetic. Rudeness and taunts have also slipped through the cracks. Hey, move aside. I'm going to be late. Look, you didn't set the phone down properly again. You must stop your government freeloading. Fatu will come in the evening. Make fresh kheer. Don't bring out the cashew burfi. It's been sitting around all month. The washerman burned this expensive camise. Now where will you get a new one? From your in-laws? An American camise? Tell the driver to fill up on petrol in the meantime, and to give the receipt to me, not to you. You spill water. Do you want Ma to slip? If she gets up, she'll slip. That's why you want to get her up. Oh, so that's what I said. If you are making a joke, it should at least be funny. How was that a joke? Even if she wants to get up, she won't, knowing there is a plot afoot to make her slip and fall or finish her off with poison. He would get up only to find someone else prepared to knock him over by poison with him. What, really, sir? You'll say anything? Okay, enough. You're just spewing nonsense. I'm telling Ma right now. Brilliant. Then she'll jump right up. She simply doesn't want to get up. She knows everyone's upset, but huh, shush, bicker, bicker, and nag, nag, and on and on and on. Now the back is turning its back. Now, how can it turn its back even more? It's slipping into the wall. How can it demur further? There's a mark on the wall. Is the wind causing it, or is it doing it by itself? Maybe it's a bug. Or is it the wind? Or breath? If only I were a bug. The wall is cold to the touch. A tiny being glides across it. A tiny breath. Make a crack somewhere. Slip into the wall. With a minute movement, the soft clay splits. Unwittingly, my feet bore in. A sweet fragrance quivers in the air, of clay jugs and pitchers, of cool entombment in cool earth. Stay lying down, wordless, free from company, like breath. Paused. Just a little, that's all. A scrap effervescing in the air. If the bug puffs, she'll fly away. Find the embrace of the earth. Let this be my tomb. A coolness descends into her heart which is pleasant, calm, not the kind of numbing chill from outside, the peace of the wall, not the carrying on occurring behind her back, that panting behind her that makes her wonder how the breathing of the whole world has caused her own to collapse. Ma closes her eyes, finesses her silence, stops her breathing so that no one will know there is no breath left. One tiny life form, let it slip into the wall, let it slowly glide forward. Let nothing get in its way to ruin its rhythm. Let nothing break its stride. Suppress it, make it fall off the edge. And if the mud wall is hollow, what then? The mud wall is hollow. The being that emerged from her heart invented itself as it went along, forging a path through the mud. Let it invent its own breathing pattern. Let it flow in parts of its own creation. Let it course into its own veins, its own puffing, its own effervescence. Was Ma boring into herself as she slipped into the wall, carving forth her own roots, gliding into her own arteries and aerosols, a tiny being in the dark, the edge of a breath, motes of dust flying up as it glides. A faint flame of desire falls across her closed eyes. From air into air, the tomb of sand has shifted. 14. Every tale has its haphazard elements, but such features aren't necessarily hazardous. The mark or spot, which could be a bug, has appeared on the wall, and its legs, whisper thin shadows, are digging a tunnel through the brick and mortar. Heat shines from its eyes and emanates faintly from the tunnel, and the meaning of emanates here is the way steam rises gently, and just the faintest trace of a lost breath can hang suspended from it. In order to see this buggish spot, you must lie silently for a long time pressed against the wall, transforming into a bundle in the quilt, turning your back to the world. Behind the back is everyone else breathing, a throng of worry and sympathy. Open the window. It must be stuffy for Ma. Pull the curtain back. I'm sure she dislikes the darkness. Why is she in that pose, facing the wall? Why is she lying there awake, but with her eyes closed? There are children playing outside, Ma. The Mahabharata is coming on TV, Ma. Bring the newspaper, play music, make spinach and onion pakoras. Ask who, what, why. Through memory, through conversation, reheat the life she has lived, and serve it to her anew. So she will breathe again, so her soul will snap out of it. She will be reminded of what she used to do. But now, as they remind her of that life, it feels like she is not living it herself. The living is being done to her. She is being turned into pakoras, moistened, ground, grated, cut into pieces, reclining in boiling oil, eek, 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 flip flop, sliding into bellies and disintegrating. Throw it out. A voice flaps weakly. Is the bug's voice the type that burrows into the air? Flap, flap, it's all rubbish in there. Fling it out the open window. chila, football-sized chrysanthemums, water, button, chaat masala, doormat, toothpaste, cumin, kalonji, keys, poppy seeds, needle, cuff, mucus, snot, bile, breathing, entanglements. Throw them all away. Could the world be moving back and forth behind Ma's back, encircling her so that nothing she doesn't want can get to her? Only that faint flapping. 15. It's like they say, no use crying over a bug when an elephant's reaped the harvest. You might well wonder how such a thing happened. And can an elephant really harvest a crop? Well, if you insist on getting hung up on the details, fine. We have here neither elephant nor crop. Here we have only a home, a family, and its members, entering and exiting through the open door. They don't harvest anything, only belch up bucket loads of compassion. The ability to show compassion is the primary goal of all family members. It is the means to fraternity, love, peace, happiness. If you can bestow a poor thing look on someone else, you become their sorrow destroyer, godlike, and begin to relish the sight of your own reflection. And thus the family will support you through thick and thin. Some become deities, the rest paupers. Like Betty, poor, poor thing, scolding, lecturing, sweeping, under the carpet. It was all necessary to get her back on the path. But she was a poor thing, very, very silly girl, raised with the vanities and wilfulness of a pampered princess, ignorant of the pitfalls around her, unknowing, in those taking advantage of her, the worthless folk leading her astray, whom she categorized as lovers. Over and over she ended up alone. When she couldn't bring her respectable officer brother and father to heel, she packed her bags and left home, alone, poor, impoverished little thing. Once she had left, she didn't even settle down anywhere and get a job. She wrote for this place one day, gave a talk at that one to next. Bure had arranged for the purchase of a couple of her totally incomprehensible to everyone books at the Secretariat Library. Beyond that, she just wandered about willy-nilly, her clothing and hair done up like some kind of peasant clad in crudely fashioned attire, a burlap kurta, a tattered pajama, or an absurd ghagra she got for 30 or 40 rupees from a village in Rajasthan or Gujarat. Penury radiated from her person, and her family wept tears of sympathy when they beheld her. In fact, one wonders if, who knows, maybe those meeting in the bushes were not so secret after all, that compassion had played a role. Bare was allowing Ma to make some sort of arrangements to nourish her, clothe her, for as long as she remained on the street. When she came back, all would be well. She has a home after all, a family. What else does she have? Who knew if anyone even socialized with her or invited the poor thing over? But she moved in with any of those good for nothing folks. The family would be dishonored. The way she was going, she could end up in exile. Oh, oh, such compassion it could burst the floodgates and drown them all. The compassion did not vanish altogether, but they certainly were surprised when newspapers and journals began printing photos of her, and television stations began airing interviews with her as well, where her views were discussed about woman's consciousness, sexuality, the female orgasm. What gibberish, good God! The compassion entered even more troubled waters when the poor thing bought a fancy flat in a fancy neighborhood, and a TV, microwave, and a car too. They learned she was always on her way to or back from the airport, traveling all over the world. There were irritable whispers in the house about how things are done with sleight of hand nowadays, whether right or wrong, just to earn money and a name. If you're good at networking, and if you're a woman and young, then, well, the whispers would break off because such sentences could not be completed, or because this was as much as could be said openly. Even then, Bure cautioned Ma against talking to Betty too much on the phone, and so on. and you are not to go there under any circumstances. We cannot legitimate her lifestyle. But when Betty began to get invitations to parties at Rashtrapati Bhavan, it was no longer clear who should be avoiding eye contact with whom. It seemed odd that the whole world would be talking to her, the president even, but that the family alone refused to communicate. Tell her to come home, Buddy told Ma one day. She has no one, and here she can have some home cooking. Bahu also gave her some of her essays, asking her to take a look. Few people write on these topics after all. And this was also an angle that would give her a sense of being included, as she wouldn't continue feeling scorned. And now, the moment we have arrived at, brother and sister stand side by side, staring at Ma's back and thinking, poor thing Ma, what wouldn't I do to revive her? Such were their leaps of compassion. 16. All of these are characters in the story: the bug, the elephant, the compassion, the door, Ma, the cane, the bundle, Bade, Betty, the Reeboks that Bahu wore, and the rest of the gang who will come up in due course. But wait, Reeboks? Why are you bringing up footwear? There are those who say that long ago the Reebok was a poisonous snake that went slithering about the southern portion of the continent known as America. It underwent a transformation when someone wrapped it around his feet in order to jump about with greater agility, and it is said that all the snake's bravado entered the person who wrapped his feet in its skin. But now Reeboks are only known for the current incarnation, and the company brings forth new types of shoes, not snakes, generation after generation, all types of shoes. One has spikes on the bottom, another has holes on top, a third has cushioned soles that bounce like rubber balls. That is, the Reebok species and subspecies have grown stronger with time. They hug the earth with their tentacles and breathe fire. And who now remembers that it originated with a snake? The Reebok clan has grown so large it has beaten the Sikhs, the Gujaratis, and the Chinese, all of whom like to boast that they have reached all corners of the world. The Sikhs used to be proud that one of their number had been reached the shores of Iceland, complete with turban, kada, and kirpan. But Reeboks have defeated all three, taking the form of not only shoes, but socks, gloves, hats, bags, and bras. Is there any form in which they have not manifested their brilliance? Indeed, they have attained the highest pinnacle of achievement in all of the following fields: walking, running, yoga, and dance. But why make these assertions, one might ask? There is no straight answer to that, but there is a walking, talking, quivering example of the power of Reeboks in the home in which this tale is set, namely in the person of the one and only daughter-in-law residing there, Bahu. Everyone knows that from the day she first donned a pair of Reeboks, she spontaneously began to take long, long walks all by herself, started taking an interest in jogging with her girlfriends, and began learning yoga under the tutelage of the gurus in the neighboring park. Started taking an interest? Just like that? Or did she run towards it? And during holidays, when the neighborhood's moms had time off from the demands of their children's school, this same Bahu became a guru herself and taught popular yoga classes in summer and winter. And lately it's been heard that she is enrolled in salsa dancing classes, and who knows how often the door is startled into wondering, what is this? Ousted Betty entering, reigning Bahu departing. How are the Reeboks engineering this topsy-turvy situation? It also might have seemed like the daughter felt guilty she hadn't done her duty, and thus had turned about and walked back in, and the daughter-in-law, reassured that she had fulfilled hers perfectly, walked out. But there is no indication that the door or anyone else felt this way. Not yet, anyway. 17. everyone agrees that brides do not wear Reeboks to their weddings, nor do they pack Reeboks in their dowries, even if they are marrying into the home of a respected government officer. The Bahu in this tale is not alone in this, nor in this that her fair complexion and lovely figure were pleasing to her in-laws, nor in this that due to these factors the prognosis for the coming generations looked fine to everyone, nor in this that Ma would share with her all sorts of beauty secrets and child-rearing techniques, and that Betty, her modest sister-in-law, would teach her as well, nor in this that she departed for her marital home to make her dreams come true, feeling utterly, utterly alone in this world. An unfamiliar home, unfamiliar folk, unknown customs. Like most new brides, the new daughter-in-law of this home sat down to weep on the very first day. She had gone to use the toilet and it had got blocked. An uproar broke out in the wedding home. There were so many guests, even one out of order bathroom was the end of the world. After much pandemonium, a sweeper had come running to help, and a homemade cotton pad wrapped in cloth and soaked in blood was extracted from the toilet. Betty brought Bahu a sanitary pad, instructing her to kindly wrap it in old newspaper and throw it away in the wastebasket. The humiliation of having what one might call her dirty laundry aired in public instantly taught Bahu that she must learn what to throw away and how. When she went on her honeymoon, she wore the kind of sparkly tickly bindis you find at fairs and such on the banks of the Ganga, and her braid swung with parandas of red and gold. She discarded the bindi for a defiant kumkum, a full moon rising in the middle of her forehead, which expanded as the years passed, eventually changing hues to match her sari or suit, and she jettisoned the braid as well, and let her hair down so it flipped and flapped like a whip as she walked. Now who could stop the rise of Reeboks in the world? And so it came to pass. Reeboks began showing up in stores and advertisements, and one day her son said, "Ma, you should get some Reeboks," as he bought her a pair. Not Sid, but his younger brother, who was due to be mentioned, and now he has, and who, since he departed for abroad, crossing the 7 seas, is sometimes not mentioned at all, which is why he hadn't yet come up. But he too plays a role in keeping traditions alive. He has been mentioned now, and he will be again on occasion. Every mother has a sort of son who tells her, "Ma, you have been sacrificed on the family altar." Women of every race and creed meet this criterion. To what has already occurred, the son adds imagined oppressions and exhorts her to put on her Reeboks and stamp out of the door.